Hi guys, Matt Goddard here from the Boxing Locker, former professional boxer, now boxing coach, fully qualified PT, and today I'm going to be breaking down the current state of heavyweight boxing, namely the big three, and then also just a brief mention for each of the kind of up-and-comers, the so-called challengers to the thrones of the top three. So obviously when I talk about the top three, until recently, Andy Ruiz had claimed the 4 titles from Joshua, but with Joshua's recent recapturing of those four, actually, I believe 4 world titles, sorry, of those 4 world titles, and obviously the top three has been reinstated as Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, and of course the main man in the division who doesn't hold a title, Tyson Fury, known as the lineal champion. So we've got AJ with the IBO, WBO, IBF, and WBA titles, reclaimed in his last fight with Andy Ruiz. I never actually did a full analysis or breakdown of that fight. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly go through that here. I thought Anthony Joshua boxed a very, very disciplined fight. It was no masterclass. He basically jabbed, moved, and then pot shotted a couple of extra punches through the 12 rounds. Perfectly acceptable to do. I think the guys calling it a masterclass are just saying that because they were concerned about him getting sparked out again. What Ruiz did as the champion, coming in 16 pounds heavier, is an absolute embarrassment. He should be ashamed of himself. I'm sure he is. He doesn't need me to tell him that. Having won the belts under the circumstances he did, he should have been motivated to then make more money. I mean, he missed out on potential fights with Fury and Wilder, which would have been worth tens of millions to him. And even in this rematch with AJ, I believe it was his career highest payday. Winning that, he then goes on to cement his position in the top three of the division and secure the fight with Wilder or Fury, or even a trilogy fight with AJ down the line, because obviously AJ is the big money man in the division. Very, very disappointing. Joshua was smart enough to stay on the outside, use the jab. When he got in close, he tied up. Intelligent boxing. You could see that he was very concerned about staying in close with Ruiz. And a couple of times he got caught and he looked like he didn't really appreciate it. But he did what he needed to do. He boxed well. He boxed to a game plan, and he showed wicked mental fortitude to just stick to that for 12 rounds. It's very, very difficult as a boxer. I know myself. It's very, very difficult as a boxer to stick to one strategy over a set period of rounds, especially when you think you're dominating a fight, which Joshua was clearly. For me, I would have liked him to just, towards the end of the fight, put a little bit more effort into some combinations. He's got incredible combination speed, great punch variety, and I think if he'd sort of put it on Ruiz later on in the fight with some work to the body, a little bit of head movement, he probably could have got him out of there. Wilder, recent knockout in his second fight against Luis Ortiz. Absolutely brilliant knockout. Devastating puncher. Incredibly potent puncher with either hand, with any punch. Obviously, he lacks a complex skill set, but what he does have is patience, very, very long levers, very long arms, and he's fit as a fiddle. He's in incredible shape. He is, for me, in my favourite shape out of the professional heavyweight division at present. He's lean like the old guys. He's fast. He's efficient. And when he punches to absolutely tear you in half, which is a very, very difficult thing to cope with over 12 rounds. Tyson Fury did an exceptional job of it in their previous fight. Obviously, they're lined up to have the rematch coming up soon. But he got caught. I thought Fury won that fight 10 rounds to 2. But some funky judging as always. But we'll see what happens in the rematch. I'll talk about that in a second. Then we've got Tyson Fury, the lineal champ. Sorry, Wilder being the WBC champ. Tyson Fury, the lineal champ. To be quite honest with you, the whole lineal concept is very confusing to me. He doesn't hold any belts, so he's not a champion. But in my mind, but that doesn't affect his level in the division. He's without doubt one of the top 3 for me. Number 1 with regards to skill set. He's the most mobile, he's the fastest, he's the most varied in his punching, he's got great head movement, he's confident, he's bold, he's brash, he's excellent at promoting fights, and he's good fun to watch. However, his lack of punch power cost him in the division. I think if he was knocking people out or capable of knocking people out, it would slow him down too much and he'd probably be less effective. So he's kind of got to sacrifice one for the other. He's a very exciting guy to watch though, especially if you appreciate good boxing. He's a boxing purist's absolute dream. So fights between those. Here's how I see him going. Gonna get some hatred and some trolling for this one, I'm sure. Wilder beats AJ. AJ is absolutely whipping Wilder throughout the fight. Wilder will spark him out. AJ can't not get hit over 12 rounds. He's been hurt numerous times in numerous fights. He can't do what he did against Ruiz against Wilder because he doesn't have the range, and his head movement isn't sufficient enough to evade all of Wilder's punches. So when Wilder catches him, he will catch him in 12 rounds. I don't see AJ waking up. Wilder puts him to sleep. That's Wilder, 5-belt champ. AJ versus Fury. I actually think AJ has the best chance of beating Tyson Fury over 12 rounds from a honest judging perspective. Obviously, in the previous Wilder Fury fight, Fury won that fight all day, every day. 10 rounds to 2 comfortably. At most, you could give 1 or 2 rounds to Wilder outside of the ones that were the knockdowns. But at absolute most, and you would have to really struggle to find those rounds. For me, AJ's punch volume would be the difference. He doesn't have so much to worry about with Fury's power or lack thereof, and so AJ would be able to stand in front of him, work in and out, high volume, drop to the body, come up high, lots of uppercuts and hooks, making it more difficult for Fury to evade. That being said, I still think Fury would beat him over 12. I think he's got the higher work rate in terms of punch volume, just without the power. He's going to keep picking AJ off, especially coming in straight lines as AJ does. And the lateral movement is just too much. He creates too many angles, just like he did against Vladimir Klitschko. For me, I think Fury beats AJ as well. I'm sorry to all the AJ fans. Please don't take this that I don't appreciate AJ. I like him as a boxer. I just think stylistically he has some weaknesses that those two specific fighters and Andy Ruiz are capable of breaking down, breaking through. That's not to say on his day AJ can't beat any of the three, because he can. It just depends on which of incarnations of these guys show up, in much the same way Ruiz just lost in the rematch. Very different incarnation of him, and so he lost. So there we go, guys. I've got Fury beating AJ, Wilder beating AJ, and I've got Wilder in the rematch knocking out Fury. Yeah, I said it. There we go. Little dramatic pause for effect. The reason being, guys, I think Wilder knows this time that he isn't hurt. Like he knows he doesn't have anything to worry about. So in my opinion, if I was his coach, I would be saying, right, what we need to do is vary the punches up more, change the angles, and go for the knockout from round one. Don't try and outbox him. Don't try and pull with that jab. Just every punch you throw, have the intent to do damage. Work the body hard. Work the Fury body hard. Not many fighters have effectively worked Fury's body because of his footwork, but at range, Wilder can be very effective. He just needs to keep mixing up the height, a little bit of head movement, which peculiarly he has some head movement at times. It's just very rare to see it, and I just think this time round, over the 12, Wilder is going to be less cautious and far more effective. That being said, Fury is still the best boxer in the division, without question for me. I just don't like the whole layoff. I don't like the mystery over the drugs thing. I don't like the coming back from 2 years of drugs and mental health issues, and basically being given a level of ease with his introduction into the division again, with that Sefa Safari and I can't even remember the other guy's name. They were just tiny guys. He never should have been boxing. There's loads of big but bad heavyweights. He should have been boxing big guys. But obviously they were concerned with the weight increase, which I understand from a promotional side of things. But as a fighter, I personally don't think he should have accepted those fights. Anyway, so we've got AJ, IBO, WBO, IBF, WBA. We've got Wilder, WBC, Tyson Fury, Lineal. I think the Wilder vs Fury fight is for Ring Magazine champ, which is also very prestigious. And then what do we have coming in the wings? So let's talk about the guy that I consider as the greatest threat to all three fighters, and that is Alexander Usyk, the Ukrainian master, the absolute cruiserweight undisputed champion, who was exceptional in the World Series of Boxing, the World Super Series, World Boxing Super Series, the Sauerland competition. He 17-0 at present, 13 knockouts. He's boxed an incredibly high level of opposition in that tournament. Comes into the heavyweight division, boxes Chaz Witherspoon, not a great opponent, but a big guy. This is what you guys have to understand. If you're going to enter the heavyweights, you have to be boxing the big guys. You can't be doing what Fury did and boxing tiny little guys who don't really deserve to be heavyweights, who are basically just fat cruiserweights. Usyk has experience boxing big guys. He boxed at super heavy, I believe, in the amateurs, so it means nothing to him. He's mobile, but not over mobile, so he carries power. His head moves, but not in so much that he can't set up counters. He creates angles, he jabs exceptionally well, and actually he's a very patient but round winning boxer. He's patient enough that he can pick the good shots, and he's busy enough that he's still picking up the rounds, which is an incredible talent. Then of course we have Andy Ruiz, former world champion, IBO, WBO, IBF, WBA, 33 wins, 22 knockouts, 2 losses, 1 to Joseph Parker, who I'll mention later, and 1 obviously in the rematch against AJ. I personally thought he won the the Parker fight. I personally thought he deserved to get the nod on points there. Listen, I've already said what I think about what happened. Embarrassing that he turned up in the condition he was in, that he started training so late, and that he didn't appreciate the opportunity that having those titles gave him. But very talented fighter. He's short, he's thick, he's mobile. Not necessarily overly footwork mobile, but his head is laterally moving all the time, creating angles reminiscent of some peekaboo Mike Tyson style with the head movement when he's coming forward. Less mobile in the feet. And he punches at really unconventional, damaging angles, chopping down to the top of the head, back of the ears, down into the neck. Areas that actually you very much tend to struggle to recover from, which is basically what happened to AJ over them 12. Over the previous fight. Whether AJ had issues prior to the fight or not, we don't know. But for me, they're unconfirmed because it's easy to come out and say them things after the event. I just think he got caught cold, and he didn't expect Ruiz to be as dangerous and as effective as he was in close. Next up, Dillian Whyte. The whole WBC scandal is absolutely ludicrous. The fact that he's been number 1 challenger multiple times and sort of dropped from the position, and the drug issue, the recent drug issue that he was cleared from, created a problem, and they knocked him back again, and then they've reinstated him, but he's not boxing till I believe late 2020 or 2021. Sucks for the bloke, but he's also created his own problems in two mistakes in his career for me. The first one is he let emotion get the best of him in the original fight with AJ. He had AJ riled, he had AJ hurt, and he missed an opportunity by just basically falling and smothering his own work. So that was a big opportunity then to catapult himself to the absolute pinnacle of the sport in the heavyweights. The second issue was the drugs ban in the past. I believe it was a 2-year ban for me, guys that fail drugs tests on clear ped use, on when they're definitely using performance enhancing drugs, don't deserve to fight again. They're putting people's lives at stake, and it's out of order. Speaking of drugs, I'll move on to the next guy in the division that deserves mention, which is Povetkin. Another drug, I think 2-time drug cheat, which is just mind-blowing that the sanctioning bodies, the governing bodies are literally so disinterested in the well-being of the fighters in comparison to the sanctioning fees that they can make from these big fights. It's absolutely mind-blowing, and they're, in my opinion, they're worse than the fighters themselves, because it's an easy issue to handle. If the sanctioning bodies, if the governing bodies just go, do you know what, mate, F off, you're out, never boxing for us again, and they all say the same thing, then that's it. People will stop using the drugs, because if they get caught, their career's over. They stop making money. And all of these things are all about money for a fighter, because as much as we want to cement our legacy, as much as these heavyweights want to cement their legacy, if they're not making any money doing it, then they're very few and far between that will be willing to continue. Moving on from Povetkin, who, by the way, is 35 wins, 24 knockouts, 2 losses, and the recent draw against Michael Hunter, who I'm not going to mention in this video, but is a very, very talented guy and a hard fight for anyone on his day. Next up is Pulev. Any of the top 3 beat him comfortably. He's 28 wins, 1 loss. He's a bit of nothing to talk about in the division, really. He's been at the top for so long and achieved nothing. Ortiz, 2 losses to Wilder. For me, Wilder's the only guy that beats him easy. He's a tough fight for Fury because he's a very competent defensive counterpuncher. He's a very tough fight for AJ for exactly the same reason, and that he has the power to knock AJ out. Fury showed that he's got a great chin, so I believe he'd withstand it better. But Ortiz, for me, is a very much avoided fighter, and you have to give Wilder credit for boxing him twice. Doing what he did was he's an animal. He's an absolute animal, and the knockout in this second fight against Ortiz is exceptional. Please, if you haven't seen it, get on there, check it out. It's absolutely beautiful. Short, right hand, straight to the top of the head, high on the head, boom. The guy's asleep. It's exceptional. Adam Kownacki, 20-0, strong, high work rate, lots of punches, fairly reasonable power in each hand. Defensively poor, not overly mobile, but the work rate is going to be a challenge for anyone in the division. He's very, very, very fit, considering he's no exceptional physique. But this is something I've mentioned so many times in the past. Everyone talks about AJ going into that Ruiz fight. Oh, how can a short, fat guy ever beat a guy in the shape that AJ's in? Physique means very little in boxing, particularly in the heavyweight division, because your fitness isn't reflective of your physique. You can have a high body fat percentage and still be incredibly cardiovascularly fit. In fact, it can improve your cardio because you're working with such a heavyweight all the time when you're running, when you're doing boxing, when you're doing agility drills, that actually your heart's having to work harder. Now, I'm not saying that's better for you in the long run, because obviously being fat isn't good for you. But if you're fit and fat, then that doesn't mean you can't outwork a guy for 12 rounds. It doesn't mean you haven't got hand speed. As long as you are mobile, agile, and dynamic, you can be an effective boxer relevant to your shape, provided you're willing to put the work into being that. There we go. That's all I'll say on Kownacki. He's not in great shape, but he's a very good high work rate puncher with lots of different angles. Joseph Parker, disappointing career. Could have been far, far more successful if he'd stuck to a better game plan, jabbed better in the couple of losses that he's got. 26 wins, former world champion. Got a beautiful jab, absolutely incredible jab, really good on his feet. Doesn't do enough, doesn't do anywhere near enough, doesn't move his head enough off of that, and doesn't utilise the jab to the extent that he should. He's a good boxer, but I see him getting beat by any of the top 3 and a couple of the guys outside of that. The last guy I'm going to mention is another cruiserweight moving up, Murat Gassiev. Now, he was meant to make his heavyweight debut. Hand injuries postponed that. Now, this guy, interestingly, for you guys, I expect in hearing my opinion, this guy is probably even more of a threat to the division than Usyk. Not because he's a better boxer. Obviously, Usyk beat him. He's 26-1. The one being the Usyk loss. In I believe that was the final of the cruiserweight WBSS. But he's a bigger puncher than Usyk. He's a bigger man than Usyk. He's got a great jab. He lands very, very hard, very, very effectively. He works the body well, and he's going to be in their face a lot more dangerous. And I think, again, another cruiserweight who was going to be a big challenge for anyone in the division. So there we go, guys. That's all I'm going to say on it. That's the heavyweight division broken down for you by me, Matt Goddard, from The Boxing Locker. Check me out on Instagram at The Boxing Locker. Check me out on YouTube now for the rest of my videos. Loads of content on here. And also, please remember that the website www.theboxinglocker.com will be up and running soon with loads of tutorials, loads of boxing coaching, just for a monthly subscription. Very cheap, very, very, very effective for those who don't have access to a high-level coach. I'm going to be giving you all the information you need to learn, to improve, to progress, and to continue progressing as you try and learn boxing. So head over to the www.theboxinglocker.com. It's not up and running yet, but the launch date is soon. And be ready for some great content. Thank you all. Please keep checking out the rest of my videos. There's going to be more coming soon. It's me, one more time, Matt Goddard at The Boxing Locker, and I am out of here. Cheers, guys. Thank you.